Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven on this Tuesday morning. I hope everybody has had a good weekend. Valentine's Day is coming up. These are some mixed paranormal activity stories from people from Reddit. And I hope y'all enjoyed this collection. Number 1, I'm not really sure what this qualifies as. I've had a few unexplainable experiences in my life. This one really rises above the rest. Maybe someone can help me understand what happened to me. When I was in junior high school, I was a member of a gang. Nothing like what you see in movies, just a bunch of dumb white kids sneaking around late at night causing fairly innocent mischief. One night, we were wandering around random neighborhoods, and it was probably between midnight and 1 a.m. We came across a large party full of high school teenagers. They were drinking and yelling and playing loud music. One of the members of our gang began mouthing off, shouting obscenities at them, and suddenly they were chasing us down the street. Most of my friends jumped the fence or scattered into neighboring yards, but myself and another member ran down the middle of the street. It was fairly dark, but there were street lights and a lot of ambient light. The largest group of the party was chasing us, and something inside me told me to stop and stand still. I knew I couldn't outrun them, as they were quickly gaining on us, so I stopped. The entire group of guys ran right past me, several of them within a foot of me, and tackled the person I was running with. They roughed him up quite a bit and asked him his name. I heard everything that was said, and I watched everything they did. I was waiting for them to turn to me next, but they never did. Instead, they finished with him and they walked back up the street right past me. Not one of them looked at me, even though I was literally standing in the middle of the street, no less than a few inches from them. I waited until they passed, and then I walked over to my friend to help him off the ground. He was shocked to see me. He asked me where I went. I told him I was standing there the whole time. He insisted I wasn't. He said he was running with me 1 second, and I was just gone the next. I recited the whole conversation, and he was incredulous. He insisted I was nowhere to be seen. I've always wondered how this was even possible. Has anyone else ever heard of or experienced anything like this before? Number 2. My daughter has a doll that was the battery operated. It would clap and sing when it heard a loud clap. Also had a motion sensor. The batteries died, so we put it on the shelf in the dining room. Days passed and we never put in new batteries. The shelf is too high for the children to reach, and even if they could, they didn't know how to change the batteries. Anyways, middle of the day, no one was near the doll. It starts singing and clapping, only for a few seconds. Weird, but it stopped. Then randomly at nighttime, you just doze off and this bitch would sing loudly and scare you awake. Laugh out loud, but it's not that funny. So I investigate the doll and get nothing. I clap loudly at it and it doesn't activate. I wave my hands for the motion sensor and nothing. I put it back on the shelf and walk back to my room. The damn thing goes off again. What the hell? I take the doll down and throw it in the outside trash bin and go back to sleep. The next day, the doll is on the couch in the living room. The kids are 3 years old and 4 years old. I know they couldn't have gotten that doll out of the big trash can. There's no one else who could have gotten it. As I approach the doll, it starts singing and clapping again. I freak out and ask the kids anyways. They say no. So I turn on my fireplace and I throw the doll in. Burnt bitch. Then my daughter brings me a pink teddy bear, tells me he is not her friend anymore, and throws him into the fireplace too. The black smoke that rolls up the walls and into my house was crazy. I had to open up all the windows. Evil doll gone, unfriendly pink teddy bear gone too. My daughter still talks about the doll to ask me why I burned it. I told her it was haunted. Thanks, bye. Number 3. I, male 18, who stays up way too late at night, lives with my parents, mom, and stepdad, who I call my dad, which will be referred to as dad from now on. He goes downstairs late at night to eat food. He has problems sleeping and deals with insomnia, so he gets hungry at night. But the thing is, he always goes down at 1:34 a.m., always on the dot. As soon as it hits 1:34, the door opens and he walks down, without fail. He always stays downstairs too, for what could be hours at a time. The latest he's ever stayed down was for 4 hours. I once was downstairs in the bathroom, and when I walked out, his eyes were shut. It wasn't sleepwalking because you could interact with him, talk to him like normal. But I walked back into the bathroom and peeked around the corner, and I saw him. He looked like a robot moving around and doing things so robotically. I walked out and tried saying goodnight to him, but when I received no response, I turned around and he was facing me and just standing there like a board, mouth open, like he was trying to say something, but it was wide open. I was obviously freaked out and thought it was a joke he was pulling, and I just walked back while still facing him. I turned the corner and heard shuffling, like he was rushing something. When I got back to my room, and for clearance, I sleep on my bed the opposite way my bed is facing, and on my stomach. So I'm laying at the foot of my bed, staring out, and my door is across the room. So I'm facing my door. Normally the lights in the hallway are off, but I heard the light switch turn on and looked out my door and saw feet by the bottom of them, the shadow under the door invading my room. It was there for 10 minutes. My eyes started watering for how long they were open because I didn't want to close them at all cost. When it leaves, I could not for the life of me fall asleep, not because I was terrified, but I physically couldn't. In the morning, when my mom's alarm went off at 6 a.m., I jumped out of bed as my mom left her room and hugged her. I saw my dad laying on his bed, but he was looking at me with the same face he had when I saw him in the kitchen that night. Every night it still happens, and I never left my room during the period of time, and I am terrified if someone does. I never seen anything around the house that's ghost related, but my parents and sister have, and they all heavily believe in ghosts. I never talked to him about this because I am terrified to even think about it. Number 4. I posted this before, but my flair for dramatization got it removed, so I'll do my best to keep things short and clinical this time. I'd never seen a ghost before this, only felt them. But this one morning, when I was still with my ex, I started hearing a very insistent voice. I thought it was him, so I turned over to tell him to knock it off, and saw we weren't alone. An older man I had never seen before was leaning over him, whisper yelling in his face to wake up. I made eye contact with him, which I can only describe as being eerie as hell. In that moment, he was just gone. I immediately woke up my ex, who said he had heard the voice telling him to wake up, but thought it was me. When I described the man I saw, my ex said it sounded a lot like his great-grandfather, who passed when my ex was just a little kid. I like to think he just had a message for his great-grandson that unfortunately was not relayed, but just my theory. Number 5. When I was growing up, we would go and visit my grandmother on the east coast of Florida about once a month. So I was just as comfortable in her little town as I was my own. Even at the age of 10, I knew all the back roads and shortcuts and scenic drives. One afternoon, my mother and I were in the car and we were taking a leisurely ride when she took me farther down a known road that I have never recalled being on. and then she took a left and got on a road that ran through the salt marsh. As we were going along, she is sharing stories about the swamp ape and other local legends. When I look up and say, "Oh, I know where we are. I recognize this area. I came down here with Grandma once." My mother was confused because my grandmother had not driven in years. She didn't even own a car. I proceeded to tell her about coming here and describe a big Victorian house on the corner overlooking the marsh. As we approached the curve, I said, "Here, it's right up there." My mother pulled over, and there was no house on the hill as I remembered it. "Where's the house?" I asked. You could clearly see that at one point there had been a homestead there. There were remnants of stone walkway and a retaining wall. In the way the trees were spaced, and the ground leveled out. I want to describe the two-story house in full detail, from the gingerbread wood carving on the porch swing. My mother kept asking me questions, and I kept answering them. I told her that I had come with Grandma to visit a friend who was ill, and that had brought food for the family, and that I remember playing with a little girl on the front porch and swinging in the swing with her. It was then my mother told me that the house that used to be there had burned down in the 1940s. Wait, what? Rickard said the 1940s? And that, yes, the lady who had lived there had been a friend of my grandmother's, and that she, my mom, had a very distinct memory of visiting here with her mother when the lady had been ill and bringing food. She then said, "I always wondered who the little blonde girl was that I played with on the porch that day. I asked my mama on the way home if she would bring me back to play with the little girl, and she was perplexed because there was no young children in the home at the time." Instantly, we were both covered in goosebumps when we realized that approximately 20 years before I was born, I played on a wraparound porch with my own mother. Number 6. I'm new to the subreddit, but I have quite a few stories to tell. I seem to be a magnet for this stuff, I don't know why. Here's one of a few that I'm going to tell you. I'm 15 in the story and my brother is 20. Sorry if that story feels like it's bouncing around. Writing was never my strong suit. I'll work on my structure. So, my brother used to own his old rifle. It was made in 1936. It was used by the Russian military in World War II. Now, it didn't take long for odd things to start happening. I mean, like day one, night one. Now, so he gets the rifle home, and we were both nerds about history, so we were examining the rifle, looking up markings, etc. Later that night, I was trying to fall asleep. I had my door open to my room when suddenly I watched a black shadow walk past my door straight what appeared to be a wall. Now, I'm a very logical person, even though so I thought it was my brother going to the bathroom next door, but I never saw the light go on and heard the fan because he hits both. So I waited a bit to go and look into the bathroom, but no one was there. Went to my brother's room and he's gaming away with his headset on and claims that he had never gotten up. Now, this was the start of it as the summer kicked on and school was a whole mess of stuff started happening. I swear, in the middle of the night, it would sound like someone in boots marching in the kitchen. We would find cabinets being left open, even watched it happen a few occasions, sometimes even hearing them being slammed shut. If you're watching TV late at night, it would feel like someone was right on top of you, like such a heavy presence on you. I even had things thrown off my desk, and had this one toy tank that I set on my desk, and I would always find it across the room against the wall, along with my bed being messed up. Now, most of this happened at that night or when no one was home, but we all had encounters with the shadow and the marching cabinets. But I am the only one with a trashed room, per se. Now, one last thing, my sister, 12, seems to be quite aware of spirits being present. Like we go somewhere that was haunted the first time and could tell you who was there and how they died, type of deal, or the guide would tell you. She refused to touch the rifle, told us to get rid of it. Day one said there were 3 attached to it. One was a shadow, which seemed so obvious now. One was a female soldier who doesn't know she's dead, and a small kid who didn't seem like a kid. Now, some of this part is a blurb. According to her, she would hear the boy kid in my room running around, jumping on my bed, and he would apparently do this when I left because he was happy I left the house. According to her, he talked to her once and said I reminded him of a soldier in his village and I was a bad man. Number 7, when I was in college, me and a few friends made our own Ouija board on the back of a metal board. One night in the attic of our large sorority house, while we were playing on it, a spirit started moving the glass cup across the board. When we asked the spirit's name, it spelled out Gramps. It then spelled out the last name of another girl in our sorority and help her. We found out the next day that the girl whose last name was spelled out had gone home suddenly because her grandfather had just died. We later found out that she called him Gramps. She also suffers from bulimia. Other scary things happened. We played on that Ouija board. To this day, 30 years later, I refuse to have one in my house. Alright, some of those stories gave me chills, I can tell you that. I love y'all so much. I hope y'all enjoyed these stories. Thank you to the Redditors who allowed me to read them to you. I will see y'all on Thursday. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. Remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross